G'day, welcome back. This is the next video I'm doing in my rabbit holes playlist. I haven't done one of those for quite some time, and they just tend to be some rambling video about some topic vaguely related to chess. Now this video I'm dedicating to the Greco Moller line of the Italian game. Certainly the opening I grew up playing, and at different points in time it's kind of been refuted in inverted commas, but it does retain its popularity, both the Italian game itself and then obviously the Greco and the Moller lines. And what I want to get out of today's video is, first of all, the tools which you use when you're looking at an opening. So we're going to look at the Scid versus PC. We're going to see how you use engines and engine games to help you analyze the positions, and also, obviously you need a good database, and we're going to sort of go through some of the database choices. And then once you've got all the tools available, just my approach, other people can do differently. My approach is sort of delving into an opening, which you've got to have some familiarity with already, and an understanding the main themes and lines behind the opening. In this case, as I said, the Greco-Moller attack in the Italian game. So I'm going to kick off, first of all, looking a little bit at Scid versus PC. This wasn't really my intention when I started, but if you have a look, Scid versus PC, we've used that a lot in my videos. I've written a couple of videos about how to build and compile it and make certain tweaks to it. So this is my version of Scid versus PC here. Colored arrows, and there are other sort of little features which I've added to it. Rank, and then Control Alt. Center button is night moves. Now, unfortunately, my night moves, this is the sort of thing you can think. I kind of like the way I think is a chess.com or whoever does it, little sort of L-shaped for night moves. So maybe I could sort of work on that. And the other thing, which this Scid versus PC, my customized one, has an eval bar. So I thought, okay, that's fine, right? And I did a video about that, just sort of show you the process, just to get people familiar with a bit of code. Actually, you can do a lot with it. Now, what I noticed, though, when I went to Scid versus PC website, this is the main website. It's a Scid versus PC, and it's mainly on SourceForge. Shows you what it is. That's the GUI we're very familiar with. And in fact, this GUI shows a lot of the windows, which often you don't see when I am running it. But we'll have a look at these later as we're sort of delving into the Italian game. The games list, PGN, you have player photos, and you have a tree view, which can be quite useful when you've got a manageably sized database. What I did notice, though, is you went to features and changes. You can sort of click around. So there's a new version, Scid 4.26. And what I noticed is that they have a score bar for the main board. So I did that a few months ago. They've done it, and it looks actually better than mine. But so they've done it. So obviously, I've got this situation where actually I should download the latest version. It's basically just like updating Windows. They've made quite a few improvements, which I think are worth delving into. I'm not going to delve into all today, but I definitely wanted to download it and see what the score bar looks like. So let's do that. What you need to do is you go back to downloads, and you click on, you want the source code, which you can see this location here, and then you download a snapshot already, but we'll do it again. Yeah, that's the version, goes to downloads. So we've got a download of it. Okay, that's good. And I did it already, but once you've downloaded it, you unzip it, downloads, and you can see that you unzip it, and then you'll have these files, and basically you just copy all those files across to a directory. So actually, Scid, put the directory, actually doesn't need the directory anyway, and the directory, and then you have a look at all the files in there to copy them across. There's the T key, TK, and TCL script files, and then there's the C source as well, and the way to install it. I did it already, but I'll just show you .configure. It's just a little sort of setup thing. It says, okay, that's good, and then you run make, makes it the normal C build tool. I've done already. Compiles everything, makes your program, and now we've got a new version of Scid. Now this works straight off for me because I had the early version of Scid. All the dependencies, particularly the TCL, TK development package, are there. You have to watch early videos to sort of add the different dependencies you need. Works, comes up. Now, one thing I noticed, I was just doing this a minute ago, is that you can obviously run two versions of Scid at the same time. There's nothing against that. And then the funny thing is that it also it's using the same configuration file, so I better not change a setup file, right? Stockfish is already set up in it. It wouldn't have been because it's just set up on my versions, obviously using the same file. And we'll get Stockfish running, and there's Stockfish, and there we go. So we've got the eval bar. I did have to change that. That's options, score bar. Got a few choices there. Oh, show ticks. My one's got show ticks. Let's put the show ticks. Right. Okay. That's compared to my one. it's about the same. So what I'll probably do is, my one was very clunky. I just copied the code from a Scid into Scid versus PC and did some tweaking with it. I think that's quite a good location they've got it, and then can move around with it. So that's great. So now I've got Scid versus PC with eval bar, perfect. And you can see that if we do something stupid, then the eval bar moves. Good. Okay, happy with that. So that's just the new version of Scid versus PC. Written up there, sort of part of what we're going to be doing today. This is just the first stage. As I say, this is going to be tools you're using, database you're using. Important to refer back to books if you have them, or courses. But obviously, I'm old school. I've got some important books to look at, and then you use the games, master games, STEM games, model games to get a sense of what opening's all about. And then later on, you actually use the engine and some engine games to sort of really delve into what are the good lines to play. We're going to want a database of Italian games to have a look at. So what we do here is, I've got a couple of databases. You need a big database. You can either use Lumbras or Queso. Let's just go to Queso for the moment. Queso is a bit smaller. Queso loads up the database. Now I'm going to make a couple of points here just about using the databases in general. Scid versus PC has this SI4 database format, and if you have a big PGN, the first thing to do is load it in and convert it to a database, because the database is much more compressed. My early video on Scoutfish showed how compressed PGN can be. So it's much more compressed, it's much faster, and you can also save the file. Whereas if you're just using PGNs, which often I'm just using PGN just to fool around, download a PGN from chess.com or whatever and have a look. You can't save that. So what you need to do is plonk it into a database and then use that. Okay, so now we've got the Queso base, and then we'll just use a few of the relevant windows here. We want to look at the book window, and we want to move to the key positions. So 5, knight f3, knight c6. So they were the most common ones. Bishop c4 is not so common. You can see the royal pair is about 7 times as common in this. And then you can see that it's actually the two knights defense is the most common, maybe heading off to a fried liver, but we're going to do the Italian game. c3 is the main move, knight f6. And this is where we get a lot of diversion in recent gameplay. Of course, Greco Moller is all the d4 line, and you can see that once again, most people play which is the Giocco Piano Misso, and we're going to play the Giocco Piano, obviously Giocco game, piano slow, and Piano Misso, piano play, I guess, very slow, right? But of course, we know they're comparing it to King Gambit, so these are not slow openings. So playing d4, and now we've got all less games, take. Now here's the other point of divergence. Once again, you can see the percentages there. Many more people play, 85% play the BD2 line, which is the boring line. Exchanges down, and there's not a lot left in the position. But we're doing knight c3, which is Greco Moller, and you can see the results are not good. And then knight takes e4, and I think we'll and then castles. Okay, we'll hold it there because obviously this position, bishop takes c3 is the main line. I'm going through this quickly. I'm sure most people are reasonably familiar with this. It's basically when you're a junior, it's basically one of the first lines you learn about. And bishop takes c3 is the main line, and knight takes c3, a bit of a blunder. So we're going to look at this. So we've used our opening book to get to this position, and when we want to try and find all the games. So now we want to find all the games from this position, and what you do is simply go move it down a bit because I have it up there so that I can do my thing. So we go search, current board, search. Right, that's searching. I think it's the 4 million games of Queso base, 5 million games, and it's come back. You can see it come back with 1,420 games, and then we'll load up another one of the windows game list, and there is the 1,400 lines. Now, actually, I might just make this window a bit smaller so we can just put it there so you can see what's going on. I want to show this bottom bit so you can see the way Scid works. Got Queso base, and we've filtered 1,420 games, and I did this already, but I'll just show you the way you create a new database. You can have as many databases as you like, and you can put them wherever you like. So this is ChessDB, Queso base, and I'm going to just create another one. I'll use test because you can see I've already got one called Italian there. Test, save. Now you've got an empty database, and then all you do is you come over there and you drag across there, and it'll copy the 1,420 games. Right, so now you've got Queso base has all games, and now we've got the test one. So what we want to work with, which is the 1,420 games, which are from that key position in the Italian game. And then now we can go on. Now, obviously, you can do this for any opening, or you can filter for end games, so big data end games. You've seen in previous videos, I've got a database of all the World Chess Championship games, which I go through. I've got a database of the corresponding squares, positions I've looked at. And then when I've done these little studies on, Rook and 2 versus Rook N games, I'll create a database of all those games and just stick them, you can have a nice directory structure. Normally it'd be best to have a core directory, and then within that directory you have the themes, or you can just put them all in the same directory. I mean, despite RAM prices and everything going up, these files are relatively small in the scheme of things. Okay, so that's wanted to show you there. Now, I've done that already, and I've done it for go file. We'll show you the recents. I've got one called Italian 1 to Italian 2, smaller one, 1420, and then we can close Casebase. We don't need that anymore, and we messed up some games, so we don't do that. And then we're going to load up Italian 2, which is more games, and that is from Lumbris. Now, Lumbris is a bigger database, a lot more games, got a lot more duplicated games as well, because obviously the guy running that sort of aggregated like as many sources as possible. And I think it's got quite a few more of the, like maybe some of the modern online games, and Cases kind of doesn't seem to have been updated for 1 or 2 years now. So it's updated, but of the Italian game, I don't think we're too fussed about that. Now, just have a quick look at these. Pick this one, a few different windows you can look at the statistics window. Gives you a little bit of a flavor of how many games have been played through time. Go across there. So you can see these openings, they're still played relatively, it's probably when Casebase stopped working, relatively consistently in about 50 games in this database every year, not played by the strongest players. So that's just a little simple statistics window, and we can go to the bigger one and reinforce the same theme, but this is more like played by players rated about 2,000, not by players rated 2,600. Although later on we'll get onto one, because one of the lines, this sort of Rook F4 line, which is quite unusual, I never knew about. Van Forest played Aronian, so we'll be looking at that a little bit later. Okay, now close that. And the other view, we're not using the book anymore. We'll close the book view off. There is the tree view. Once you've got a database which is manageable like this, then you go Tools, go Windows, Tree Window. So there must be a transposition here, because obviously eventually we're going to get to that position we talked about. Just click through, D4, E takes D4, C takes D4, Bishop E4, check. Knight C3, Knight takes C4, castles. Okay, so now we're getting what I really want the tree view wants to show. Bishop takes C3 played 83% of the time, makes sense. Knight takes 3, played 15% of the time, and there are a few other moves which are not good. I mean, if you castle, you're losing pace. So I don't think that's well, maybe you get it back, take it, and then you have D5. Well, you get a position like that. Okay, fine, whatever. So that's what the tree view is giving it. We'll look at that in a bit, because it really does guide you in terms of, we've got this database of games which are played, and it is showing you the frequency of different lines, so that when we come onto some of these newer lines, it'll be interesting to see if they're being played. And what we can do now, let me just go. So we're in the Lumbris one. And you can see the Lumbris one, I've sorted by date, and there's a bunch of games up here which kind of low-rated players, they don't give a date. So they're annoying me. So it's just a bit more of a lesson here on Scid. We will delete these, but they're still there. You can see they're faded out. Now you go Tools, Maintenance, Compact Database, Compact game file. Actually, the thing about the database is there's a few different files. There's a name file as well, but not doing anything about it. Compact game file, don't save, and H games will be permanently deleted, I assure. Yes. Okay. And now they're gone. So that's another little tool that you often, you accidentally create a game you don't want, or duplicate a game, you just go and delete it like that. And it's a pretty painless process. So here is the book which I am working from. This is a damn old book. It's in descriptive notation, and it's published in 1977, but it's a book I used to borrow from the library, and then I bought it. Now, the thing about this is because the theory in this book ends in the late 70s. Obviously, it's not up to date, and actually at the time it was kind of considered, the Greco model was a little bit dubious. So we're going to go through. We'll eventually get to that position and have a look at what. There's a STEM game, a famous game by Portish, is it? Yeah, Barse Portish from 1968 to 9 was a very difficult time for this opening. But as we know, openings always get, people looking more closely, and they come up with lines. Even we've seen like the Schliemann come back occasionally and all that sort of stuff, right? So that's the book we're going to be looking at. Now, this book, obviously, a little bit biased because I do love this book, but it does actually tell you a little bit of the background as well, right? So I'm just going to read some of the opening intro here. This Italian game, Greco piano, Gioco piano. I was very confused. And here we go. Many of the attacks that can follow were first discussed by Giacchino Greco, born 1600, leading player of his day, who was known by the sobriquet Il Calabrese, came from the town of Calabria. In the period 1619 to 30, he travelled extensively in Italy, France, and England, and distributed to rich patrons numerous manuscripts. Okay, so that's where we get the Greco bit of the name. And then we go, Greco is generally credited as a founder of the Italian or Romantic school of chess. And then they mentioned Philidor, more strategic, and then L. Anderson, attacking and so on, right? So this book goes into a little bit of the background there, which I found quite interesting. And then Morphy gets an mention. So, and what we're going to look at is, we're going to look at these, go back to the games. We have got, I think it's 3 games by Greco, and I think one's duplicate, but let's have a look at these games and just get a sense of what's going on in these positions. Right? It is great fun. I mean, Greco's games are great fun. I mean, he's done many other sort of game snippets. Are they real? They're often versus NN, not known. And particularly for this, so he's got recognition for Greco and Moller attack in Italian because of these games which follow that line. So we'll go through these reasonably quickly. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4, bishop C5, D3, knight F6, D4, ED, CD, bishop to B4 check, knight to C3, knight takes E4, castles. Okay, this is the knight takes C3 line, take it back, and this is not considered the best line, by the way. I'll show a snippet later. We'll sort of go through how the theory evolved. That's the old classic line. A lot of these things have similar themes to the Evans Gambit with the using the A2 to F7 diagonal, take the rook. Now it's according to the engine, it's +5, check. Well, that's one of many which would win. I mean, obviously winning the queen effectively, block with the knight. Obviously, many other ways to win. Okay, bishop gets out. Bishop G6, threatening checkmate. Block the mate threat. Queen to F3, check. Sort of switching to the other side. Bishop drops back, take the bishop. And it's the end of his demonstration. Okay, so you can see lots of fun there. Sacrifices on F7, knights and bishops prowling and using that Queen B3 maneuver. Okay, let's have a look at another one. Hope it's not the same game. That's a different game. So we'll quickly go to this position. Pawn takes, bishop takes again. Same line, different line now. Bring the bishop back, bring the rook across, threatens mate, blocks, threatens mate again. Mate is threatened. Block the bishop, check. Nice maneuver there. Oh, that's pretty. Check. And made a bit Morphy-esque there in terms of getting all the pieces active, sacrificing one as a diversion, and then finally mates on F7. So that's all good fun. And we'll just look here at one last game. Looks different. Let's have a look. Go to the key starting position. Knight C3, knight takes E4, castles, bishop takes. That's interesting. That is the Moller attack. And let's see how it was played in the old days. Okay, so got the piece. Now fork the 2 pieces, defend them. It doesn't really have the edge yet. Take the G pawn. Okay, queens are swapped off. That's not too good. Position's even. Check. Let's see where. This is the blunder. I mean, just stick a knight on E4. Knight F4 is considered best anyway. So king in the corner. Now we can pin on this diagonal, and then black has to protect the knight in a very unfortunate situation. Check what you take. Check with the other rook. That's cute, isn't it, right? I mean, they've got 2 choices. You can take the knight and have a slight advantage, or mate in 3, check. And this is the trick to come around and checkmate here, which is very, very neat. And I think there's no defense. Obviously, Greco in the old days was just sitting by his chessboard, coming up with all these. Obviously, I think we consider them fabricated games, which are a lot of fun to go through. Now you understand why Greco has his name associated with it, and it's just a bit of fun looking at some of the earlier games. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through sort of a little bit systematically the lines as they were presented in my book, and then we'll end up coming to this key position in the main Greco-Moller line, and then using sort of modern techniques to see how we can come up with our own ideas in it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go through a few of the key lines I've picked out in the book, different points of the book, just to get a bit of a feel for the way we used to look at the Italian game. The board's going to be a bit smaller than usual today, but I don't think it should be a big problem. Now, should this actually on the screen? Now we go and find the position we want here. Right, this is the key starting position. You can see in the tree view it says bishop takes c3, 83%, and you can see looking at this screen grab here, knight takes king pawn is best, and then castled, and then it says at the top of the second column there are two choices: knight takes knight, and it says nothing, and bishop takes knight exclamation mark, and there's this tiny smooth castle. So, and if you look at the tree view here, then you can see that those are indeed sort of the three most common lines, but bishop takes c3, everybody knows that's the best line. But what we'll look at first is this knight takes c3, just add variation, because that's, if you're on a game which has existing lines, then you add lines to it. And then you look further down on the column, white has to take back, pawn takes knight, and then once again we get to a turning of the lines where bishop takes pawn is the line which Greco had great pleasure showing us, and also pawn to queen 4. Pawn to queen 4 is sort of the bailout, which, maybe it's okay, but anyway, so this is the interesting line, and then I'll just bring up the next page, because this is relevant, because you can see that there's that queen 9-3, which Greco suggested, but actually bishop to rook 3 is key here, because it, let's just bring up next page, I think, it stops black from castling, or makes it more difficult to castle. Just look at the tree view, you can see that actually queen to bishop 3 is most played, and obviously the tree view is giving you sort of the estimated score. Actually seems to be quite similar score to queen b3, but bishop to a3 is the line, and then pawn to queen 3. You can see that the tree view is giving you that metric here, that d6, white is better. Any other move like bishop takes a1, black just loses on the spot. In 66 games, click there. And then now it's time to do something about your rook, I believe. Rook to bishop 1, rook c1, that's almost the only move played. And then now the bishop has to do something. Bishop rook 4 makes sense. Most played move. And queen to rook 4. And the game goes on, and white has, you can see white has a big advantage, right? White does better in these positions. And I just wanted to sort of demonstrate that. Bishop rook 3, also see that a lot in the Evans gambit. Okay, so that's latest thinking on the knight takes c3 line, if you meet that in the game. Take back and bishop rook 3, and you get a better position. So that was one version we'd teed off. Let's just go back. Let's assume that we're now looking at the bishop takes c3 line, most common line, and now we're getting the Moller attack. Now this I'm just going through this because it's kind of the thought process. Okay, so that's not working anymore for knight takes knight doesn't work. So now black switches to bishop takes knight, and bishop takes knight actually gives black the advantage. And you can see here that on the first, middle way down the first column, pawn to queen 5, the move suggested by J. Moller, right? The older move, pawn takes bishop, is well met by pawn to queen 4, and that ended up giving black the advantage. Pawn to queen 4, bishop's got to move, you can castle, all sorts of things, right? So this pawn to queen 5, which we saw in one of the Greco lines, Greco games, is actually the way forward, right? So this is the sort of the evolution of this chess opening. So let's do that. D5. B-tape C3 is also played, but you can see the difference in the tree view that it's better to play D5, and people know that. And then now you've got a bit of a choice here. It looks like on the score result that, in fact, what I'll do is I'll undock the tree window, and I'll just try and have it somewhere where it's not too much of a problem. Get our OBS and make this page a little bit smaller. Sorry about that. And then now I'm going to move that up there so we can see the tree view. And you can see that's giving you the score. So actually, the score is not too much different between knight e5 and bishop f6. Yeah, so it gives bishop f6 an exclam in the book. Harding and Botterill give it an exclam, so it is considered the best move. Knight king 4. There's another line. But anyway, let's continue with the very most frequently played line. After bishop to b3, we need to load up another page. And you can see it continues. At one time, it was thought that this move led merely to a complicated draw, but the new improvements show that black has winning chances. Okay, so that's why this happens. Rook to king 1. See rook to king 1 on the tree view. Played 96% of the time. Gives a score of 40%. Nothing else really matches it. So you got to play that. And then now we get to the next choice in the roads. I believe castle leads to a forced draw. So we're going to be looking at knight to king 2. And you can see knight to king 2 invariably played, right? The score is 40%, so it's that's from the white side, so it's still better for black. And castles is not so good for black, so we just continue with knight e7. There's no choice. You look at this, you just got to take that piece back, and then now see the continuation. d6 is the only move, so now that d6 on the white side was a threat, now the bishop diagonal is blocked. And we're now looking at this bishop to g5. Look at the tree view. It's almost the only move to play. Well, actually, you look at that. Go back. Back. Do I go back? G4 is a line there. Maybe we should look at G4. So let's just note that down. This is where we're just surveying it. We're looking at what the tree view is telling us and what move is that. So that's like move 12 G4. Is that something worth looking at? In fact, what we can do is I can put G4 on the board. I'm going to see add variation. What does the computer think about it? Well, it thinks it's pretty even. It'll in black's favor, which all these lines are. That's interesting. So the g4. Anyway, bishop d5, the main line is bishop d5. The only move played here is bishop takes g5. So it's bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, and we're going through the line there. So we've got a couple of choices from the black side, or you can see we've actually got h6 up on the board, and h6 you can see much better for black than the alternative castling. So castling here perhaps leads to a draw. So after this h6 move, and you can see there's a few choices there on the tree view: queen to king 2, or queen e2, queen h5, bishop b5 check. This is where we're going to sort of come back to this position a couple of times. What we're going to do is first of all, we're going to go through this game there, the Barse-Portisch one, where it went bishop b5 check. You can see in the note there that there's this queen to king 2 line, a Karpov line, which we'll look at because that's actually became the more common line after this. But anyway, bishop knight 5 check. Let's add variation. And then the continuation is bishop d7. See, black's got a decent edge now. And then now we play queen e2, take the bishop back with check, block with our queen. There's a few lines now, but queen e2 was in this game. All of them are losing for white effectively. We need to unpin, and you can see where we've got that king to b1, king to f8, as it were. Grab a pawn, take it back, rook to king 1, knight retreats, rook to king 6, rook e6, and king to bishop 1. And this is winning for black. He's a piece up, and he will untangle. I guess knight f6 is coming. So that is that game. And in the book, there's a few comments about, yeah, that's it. Right. Now, let's go back. So a couple of themes there. The bishop check on the a4 to e8 diagonal, and the queen advancing, possibly attacking the b pawn, and anyway overworking the defense of the king. So, but rather than bishop check, let's do queen e2, which has become, I guess, a much more well-known line in this position. You just pressure the eval. So black kind of has to take. We triple up. Bishop e6 is the only way to defend. Take the bishop, and then you block with the move f6. Rook e3 is the line here. Now this one, I remember analysing this when I was young. Didn't seem any good for white. We can continue. Rook e3, c6 lets the queen out. Rook h3, swap them off. G6, need to block the queen. Was blocking the queen coming in. So now queen f3, attacking the f pawn, and now queen a5 attacks the rook, and the game goes on. Black's totally winning, right? So that's why this line is not particularly appealing. So let's go back and see if we can find some alternatives. The whole point is this: now we've got the idea of what's going on. Let's find some alternatives earlier on and show you the sort of idea you're thinking about here. Is got engine running down there. All right, Bishop G5 was played. Generally considered the move to play, and you can see, okay, we'll continue with that. But look, what about this? There's Rook F4 is an interesting line. Okay, and in fact, that's the one that got paid by Van Forest against Aronian. So we're going to be looking at G4, we mentioned already, and then we're going to mention 12 Rook F4. And that's a line that's worth investigating. And then we'll put Bishop G5 on the board. Bishop takes, Knight takes, H6. And now we look at the engine again. And it's not really kind of suggesting what we had on there. Queen A4 check. Queen A4 check and variation. The question is that, I want to go back. Not really in the tree view. So these maybe lower down. There it is there. 44% score, so it's not too bad, right? So you can combine the tree view, which is telling you how people performed, as with the engine view to get a few ideas. So now we've got this 14 Queen A4 check. I'm just saying that's how you might investigate an opening yourself. You're looking at the tree view, continuations have an interesting score, look at the engine. So for instance, just so you know, I'm using OBS, I've got a bigger screen, I'm just capturing the 1920 by 1080, and then I have the other little windows and my Python window and the PGN sitting all over the place. So if you're not trying to record something, then obviously you just have all these windows open, and you can get a sense of what's going on. You can see all the windows you want. Like I've got the tree view this time. So what we found is I had one more page to look at. Did I see what that was? Oh, that was just that. Okay, good. So I can minimize that now, and we can say maybe you could see me typing because I had the picture on. So we've looked at it ourselves, we've run through the tree view, we've run through the engine, and we come up with a few other lines, which, well, these are worth having a look at. What's the idea behind these different lines? Two ways of looking at it this way. Obviously, you can sit down the board, analyze, when you look at it yourself. You can sit down the board, use the engine, let the engine to guide you, a little bit of that. And the other way of doing it, which I think I've learned a lot from watching the videos of Matthew Sadler, Silicon Road, is that he would just throw a position at an engine and play engine, and then you get a sense of what the most likely score outcome is. But then you can look at the games which the engine have played and say, oh, okay, that's the theme. That's how that works. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go and fire up QChess, and we'll have a look at how we can run the computer against computer for each of these three positions, which I think are the main ones which people will come up with. In this position, Queen A4 check, and then we go back to this position, G4 or Rook F4. And you can see that that's kind of, both of them are sort of themed on embarrassing that black bishop. Okay, now we're at the stage where we're going to do the engine part of the analysis. Now, just before I do that, let me clean this up. So basically, I'm just trying to sort of give you a workflow if you wanted to sort of look at openings for yourself. So, obviously step one was we look at the classic games. Step two, you might look at book lines. Third step, you might be looking at STEM games with novelties in them. Fourth step might be browse the game with an engine, or just analyze it yourself over the board. And then the fifth step is engine games to see things. So having done step 1, 2, 3, 4, we've come up with these three different lines here, which seem worth another look. Now, there was a video, I can't find it now. John Bartholomew looked at, I think he looked at both the Rook F4 line and the Queen A4 check line. And we got G4 and H4 on these other lines. So we'll just have a look at how this all works out. Now, as I said, I normally use QChess. QChess gives me a lot of granularity in terms of playing engine against engine. You can run a batch script, run different engines, run multiple games, multiple simulations. But this is a fairly straightforward process here. We've just got three lines to look at in one opening, and we're not really concerned about different themes from different engines so much, but that could help. So what we can do is we can use our favorite Scid versus PC. And so this is showing you a workflow you could use in Scid versus PC. So what you do is, I've already run some of the games. You can see now I've got more games, got 1488 games. But I'll just give you an idea. Let's go on to one of these games. I just want to get to the position up. So there's the position after Rook F4. Yep. And just have a quick look. So this is games I've already generated, but you can have a look. The way it works is effectively, just the way it works in QChess as well, is you basically give it a fen. So it doesn't have the first 11 moves, but has a fen, plays the game from there. And you can see that was a threefold repetition. So we've got the position. Now you go play, computer tournament, very straightforward. You can have more engines if you want, and Stockfish against Leela. I actually just played Stockfish against Stockfish. Now, interestingly, in QChess, you can play the same engine against itself. This one, it'll complain. So if you have two versions of Stockfish, put them somewhere else and it'll run Stockfish against Stockfish. All the normal things you can do with it, right? How many rounds do you want to play? 10, 20? Once again, I'm drawing on what Matthew Sadler did. And I think maybe 20, 30 games gives you a good sense of what's going on. And then time per game. I actually played really quick ones. I had 5+1, for instance. 5 seconds +1, so the games happen very quickly. You can save engine scores as comments if you want, and different formats for doing that. And the main thing is the start position is you click here and you go all games from current, and then you click that. Current game's not the end of the game. Well, that's very true. And then you can see it's started doing it already, and that window it'll stay up to get out of the way. You can see here this is a line where black castled, and then White sacrificed his rook for the bishop, which seems to be the given line there, and the game goes on. I'm going to stop that, just showing you how simple it is, right? And then basically what you do is for those g4, h4, rook f4, queen f4 check, you throw those lines in there, and you play some computer games. That one we just started, it'll probably be down the bottom. So once again, we'll just delete that, and then remember that, just to remember maintenance, compact database. I think there'll be a couple of games to get rolled. And now I've run that already, 10, 5, 10, 15 games for each of these lines. And now, I won't necessarily go through all of them, but let's have a look. So let's go to this one here. So this is the rook takes f4 line. Now, of course, now we've got a set of these rook takes f4 games in there. We can go Windows, tree window. Let me undock that so I can move it around. And let's just put it over there somewhere. And now you start to see this is what the computer played. Basically, these are the computer games. There might be some games ruined already. You can see the castles, and then a knight to g6. Let's try castles. Rook takes f6. Actually, sorry, bring up the board. Rook takes f6, 50% score. G takes f6, 50% score. What ideas does white have? Bishop d2. Well, queen d4 looks like the actual idea, concept here. Attack the weak f6 pawn. So we go queen d4. And see, knight g6 is not very good. Knight g6, white wins. So you can't play knight g6, but knight g6 is played. So let's have a look what's wrong with knight g6. Bishop h6. We save the rook. Don't save the rook, it's a bit sad. Save the rook back. The rook has to kind of sacrifice itself anyway. That's kind of interesting. And bishop pair and so on. White actually wins these games. Let's go back. So a better move here is c5 to disrupt white's position. Queen takes f6 is given, and you can see that the score is basically this is all drawing. Queen takes f6, knight g6. So in this line, black stays the exchange up, but still, it seems like white can hold, and you can go through the games and just sort of get a good sense of what's really happening. So that's the rook f4 line. Go down a bit and see if we can find one for. I need to save that. This is still rook f4 castles. Okay, a bit lower. You can see we've done quite a few games. This is the h4 line, a bit which you came up with. So let's have a look at what we're thinking about with the h4 line. And you can see that it seems to be better for white, whereas castle, maybe castle's a better move. You can see black wins a bit in castle. So let's do castle line, because obviously we're playing this from the white side. We want to understand what black is doing, what we should be doing. Okay, now we soften up. So now the reason we played h4 becomes apparent. Best not to open up the file there. And see, this is strange. It's sort of the moves you'd expect actually favouring black now, which is a bit sad. Let's just see how black defends in this position. Queen takes f6. So basically, we're just a pawn up at this stage. Queen d2, bishop f5, drive the rook away. Centralised knight, that's good. Okay, we even get an extra pawn, so that h pawn becomes weak. So that's just a very, very quick look at h4 line. Go down a bit further, see if we can find another one of these lines. This is the g4 line. Okay, let's have a look at the g4 line. So that position starts there. And by and large, frequencies, scores, Castling seems to be the best move for black. So g5 is almost the only viable move. Bishop e5. You can see that white and black have some wins in this position, so it's kind of balanced. Knight takes e5, swap off, variation, takes e5. I mean, the game kind of continues, and still white and black's winning. Knight g6, the best move there. White's got his pawn back. His pawn structure looks a bit dodgy, to be honest, but he's got the bishop there, so it's not lost like that Barksay Portage game was. Just you have a game, right? Now the last one I want to have a look at here is the other line, which I didn't understand to start off with. Go back to the game view, click one of these games, and save. Yeah, this line, the Queen A4 check line, and let's see what the strategy is going on here. Okay, got to drop the bishop, Queen drops back. Now, what I didn't realize is we'll see a little bit later, maybe not in this game, but in other games, is what happens is that often the Queen takes this pawn, pressuring that rook. Okay, and then what that means is this Queen is overworked because it defends the knight and the rook, and maybe therefore the king can't castle. So that's kind of the, apart from just winning a pawn, but it's part of sort of the pressure which white is applying. So now black has castled, so now we just continue. Okay, rook e8, bring your knight back. These games all end up kind of drawn. Now b6 is played, h3, h4. I mean, white is pawn down, but it looks like he holds. And I just wanted to go back a few moves just to sort of demonstrate. Actually, it's not a good move. Black wins these ones, but I just said this was the line I kind of saw, and it actually seems to be that there is that overworked queen concept. Now, not so much. Picked up a pawn there. Black wins one back, all that sort of thing. So that sort of breakthrough on the queen side's got to be considered in this position. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. I think my voice is wearing out after all of this. So I just wanted to let's close this tree view in Scid versus PC. Sort of outline the way that if you want to look at openings, you go through this process. You're looking at classic games and looking at the books you've got, and then looking at important games, and then looking through the lines with engines, and then finally you throw engines at it, and that comes back and gives you the idea of lines to look at. And then after this is all finished, you'll obviously end up with two databases, logically two databases in Scid versus PC. One would be the people games, and the other one will be the computer games, which you can sort of continue to sort of harvest for ideas. And that's just I did the Italian game. I mean, obviously we can do the fried liver, you do whatever, and see what ideas you can come up with. As you're doing that, obviously you're familiarizing yourself with the opening. You can play it better, and then maybe you have a couple of little ideas which are obviously kind of well known, but on the other hand, maybe not everybody knows them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.